Good morning. It is Tuesday here in Cypress, Texas. All right. Wow. Today we're going to talk about Luke 16. This chapter in the Bible is probably the chapter that I've probably studied the most my whole Christian walk. And started off right. I had this spiritual awakening. All right, I was in distress about something, and all of a sudden I got relief. Right, and I knew that God did it, right? That was when I first came to realize that God was real. All right. And so I'm telling everybody I'm so excited. And there's one guy, had known him for a bit. He opened up to me about his walk, right? He gave me his testimony. And he said, chapters are just gonna pop into your head. Look them up and meditate on them, right? And so the very first one was Luke 16:9. Now I was reading the NIV version, and it says, use worldly wealth to gain friends, for when it's gone, you'll be welcome in eternal dwelling. So at the time, I was still in the military. I was still a Navy SEAL, right? And that was like at the very beginning. It was like I had started reading the Bible, started in Acts of the Apostles, and then it took a while. Oh, I know what it was. I was reading every book you can get your hands on personal finance and debt management, and I got this book, two books together. Breaking the Power of Debt and Rapid Debt Reduction Strategies. And this guy was like the first prosperity preacher, right? And in Breaking the Power of Debt is all about that spiritual warfare, tapping in and deep prayer into solving your financial issues, right? And developing discipline and all this stuff, right? And then, of course, Rapid Debt Reduction Strategies was just two basic strategies. One is a debt roll-up, and the other was just negotiating tactics with your creditors. And I didn't even know how to use Excel, but I had a whiteboard behind my bedroom door, and I listed all my debts and the balances, the highest debt to the smallest debt. And every time I pay one off, I'd, erase it, but I'd add that debt service amount to the payment of the next smallest debt. And everything you pay above and beyond the minimum goes straight to principal, lowering your effective interest rate, paying everything off faster. And I got myself completely out of debt. It was about $15,000 or $17,000, something like that. It seemed like it could have been, a million as far as until I did that, right? And I was able to get a better car, and I was able to solve a whole bunch of problems, right? And then I started realizing, it says the dishonest, they call him the dishonest manager, but he's accused of being dishonest. And it made me, and then settling the debt. That's a strategy of consumer credit counseling, is they hold back the payment on your debts to your creditors till you go in default on them, and then they renegotiate, and then they can get you a lower payment, lower interest, or even reduce the amount owed. Okay. And So because of that experience, and no one understanding that, I'm thinking, at least the reason they do it is because they get something, and what they don't get back, they can write off on taxes. That's why they do it. And so I'm thinking, okay, these creditors have just a bill of sale. They got an IOU, but now that this guy had them bring in 50% or more of the product that they owed. Now the master's got 100% more than he had, because he had nothing except the IOU, right? And so I'm like, okay. Then it made me think about Christ kept trying to reach out to the Jew, minister to the Jews, right, and bring them into the kingdom, all right. And they weren't paying attention. They weren't listening to him. So he brought in the Gentiles, okay. And it's like so he represents the shrewd manager, the accused of being shrewd, okay, because that's what he did. So that's how I'm thinking, right? And then I get with somebody, I would call him a pure Gnostic, totally, delving into and learning, studying the mystery of Scripture, right? And he's telling me, I'm telling him my interpretation, and he's saying, well, the master was dishonest. He represents the high priest who was not teaching the Torah properly, and then he starts teaching it properly, and he's bringing in what he can. He's converting, maybe not as many as God would want, which is all of them, right? But he got some, okay. And I'm like, okay, I can see that, but it says accused of being dishonest. It doesn't say proven dishonest, okay. And then with this understanding of Gnosticism versus agnostic. See, Gnosticism is the total immersion. This is the melancholy trait, right? Getting to know all the details, right? And every little, jot and tittle, which is what's commanded by Christ, right? Of learning, don't change any jot or tittle of the law. Okay, so he's talking about, and when he says jot and tittle, he's talking about the Hebrew. All right, and when you read, I did this. Go to Copilot or ChatGPT and ask it to translate the 613 laws of Moses to Paleo Hebrew, and it didn't even like the same. It means like a whole different focus, right? And so that's what he means, right? Because if you change it, interpreting it to English, yeah, like what is this even, right? It doesn't make sense. It's illogical. Well, that's why he told you not to do that. Okay. And so even just, yes, he was dishonest, right? Instead of accused of being dishonest, right? That's where he wasn't, but the understanding that it could be that it's the high priest that wasn't teaching it correctly, and now he's going to teach it correctly, and you know, bringing salvation to the ones that he could. All right, so that's how much I've wrapped my brain around this chapter, but it gets a real, gives you that understanding of the contrast of going by the letter of the law versus the spiritual meaning of the law, and that's how you get it.